So I want to welcome Jake Gardiner, Senior Enterprise Account Director from Odigo. Jake, thanks very much for joining Get Out of Rap.
Thank you, Martin. Fantastic to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We had a little prep call, didn't we, just to
We did.
get to know each other. So I've been looking forward to this one, and we're going to touch on some of the subjects and things that are important to you, and I know people listening will be really interested in as
Sure.
well. But something, and this is the kind of guy you are, the humble guy that you are. One of the things you didn't mention in the prep call was you recently, or about a month ago, was Salesperson of the Year for Odigo.
Yeah, you're right. I was humbled to receive that award. This year for Odigo has been a very positive year, and I've been fortunate enough to work and continue to work with some fantastic people. So yeah, I think part of the reason perhaps I wasn't advertising that fact is purely because it is absolutely a monumental team effort that goes into these things.
That's very nice of you to say. What do you have kind of an outlook in terms of, because I was in sales at the early part of my career as well, and I have a lot of time for people that are doing it. But have you got a particular methodology or mindset?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, obviously it varies per salesperson and obviously varies per organization, but I try to personally just keep it real. So I'm led by the technology fundamentally. I'm never really trying to sell something in inverted commas. And I think whenever you tell someone you're a salesperson, there's that kind of silence that follows straight after, because people assume that you're just going
Yeah.
to be, trying to sell them something that they don't want to fundamentally
Mm.
buy. But for us here, and I'm led by the product and the transformative benefits it can deliver. So for me, I love learning about an organization, love learning about their specific challenges, which typically aren't indifferent to other businesses. And then really we're led by the technology. So it's putting forward the best solution for their specific set of challenges. We're never trying to sell a solution that's not going to deliver real world value.
Listen, I love hearing that, because I was very passionate about saying, do you know how I'm a professional, and a salesperson isn't something from a sitcom. You're a problem solver, and you present solutions. And if people, there's nothing better, is there, than seeing a solution you've been presented make that transformative difference that you've just kind of alluded to, rather than it being some sort of market trader.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's nothing more motivating than seeing a solution that you've helped design and ultimately implement as a business in use and delivering value. And for me, that's how I tried to engender and build my relationships with the businesses that I help. It's purely led by them, and understanding jointly how this technology can solve the challenges that they have. So we're quite similar, actually, I guess, Martin.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got a trophy though, so we'll probably
I haven't
talk
got one
about.
yet.
Oh, you haven't got it?
I've been reliably informed that it's in the post. So behind me at some point there might be a trophy.
And then you'll get all kind of Charlie Big Potatoes.
No, it'll be going very modestly in the drawer somewhere.
Nice. So how long, let's take you back, this kind of journey into our industry. Where did it start for you?
It's a good question. So I think there's a theme amongst people that I've spoken to across this journey. I don't think very seldom when I speak to someone, do they say, I had a plan of working in telecoms or working specifically with contact centers.
Yeah.
For me, that journey started when I left university. I studied management and finance under the basis that it could be applied to lots of different jobs, and was fortunate enough to be successful in securing a graduate position for a contact center as a service organization. And that was really my first introduction into the market. So suddenly had to very rapidly understand the role of a contact center, the role that contact center technology plays, and understand organizations and their specific challenges in far greater detail. So it was kind of, I always call it a baptism of fire. But I've been fortunate enough to work with cloud contact center for the last 6 years of my career. So it's kind of all I know. I've got a good understanding of kind of legacy technology and the history behind it by virtue of working with businesses on that journey to cloud. But that's how I kind of entered the market. And, what I love about this market specifically is how closely people collaborate. I think people are motivated and driven by the same thing, and it's delivering memorable customer experiences. So I love the work that you're doing, Martin. I think, the Get Out of Wrap show is a really important signpost in our market. And, I think that's one of the things that's touched me most about this space. There's a lot of camaraderie.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's when people want to talk about collaborative competition, it's definitely we exude that in our industry. Do you, if from when you go and speak to maybe potential clients then, and they have a legacy system in place, what is it about cloud? Is it that they understand, they know about cloud, or they think, okay, I just need a bit more detail? What's that starting position like normally?
So it's typically born out of a set of business challenges, and those business challenges are pretty consistent across all organizations looking to cloud. So it typically comes from lack of business agility. So, and you'll know this obviously from your background, working and managing contact centers. The business wants to be in control of their own destiny, and for all too long, on-premise technology did not afford that. It was very difficult to make changes on the fly and actually take some of that control in-house. And obviously the evolution of cloud has meant it's far easier to do these things. No longer do you need to be an expert in green screen platforms to make simple IVR changes to appease your customers. You can do it in-house as a business team, managing your own journey and kind of transformation strategy over the top. So that I'd say is a key theme. The other themes, I mean, obviously cloud has meant that you can start to consume other peripheral solutions far more easily. So organizations that are wanting to deliver true omni-channel. I mean, when I first joined, obviously the market back 6.5 years ago, omni-channel had just been coined. And I think even now, that messaging is important, but omni-channel means a lot of different things to different people. And for some of the businesses that we work with on that journey to explore cloud, they've often kind of delivered siloed platforms to do different roles. So you might have a separate web chat solution or separate social media solution, for example, and they're wanting to centralize that. So I'd say it's a pretty consistent set of business challenges that drive that initial conversation forward.
Lovely. What a lovely summary. Do you find then that much like, so it's interesting there because that definitely resonates around people have added things to reflect changing needs, but it means that they have a kind of disparate environment and a disparate way. And I know certainly from operational teams having to deal with that, that is a real headache at times, kind of having to navigate from one platform to another while at the same time trying to deliver a seamless customer experience. It's very challenging. How do you approach things like that then?
So I think, I firstly, I get why businesses have taken that decision sometimes to implement tactical solutions, because investments have been made on certain technologies. And it's not the right or proper thing to do to just scrap that technology and implement something new. So they've had to do things tactically on the fly to kind of keep up with customer demands, and obviously customer demands are ever increasing. So I think in terms of how we manage that shift, it's kind of through educating at first what the nirvana scenario looks like. So in a perfect world, you might have a solution like this, and then starting to evaluate where they are today, where they've made investments. So for example, they might have implemented a CRM solution that's integrated in some way with their existing platform. Understand where they've made those investments, and then actually map out a roadmap to transition to cloud, whilst capitalizing on those existing investments where necessary and where applicable, but then also looking at better ways of doing things. And that's got to be a business-led discussion.
Yeah, I love that. And what, when you look at now the things that you're working on, what what are you working on at the moment that kind of excites you the most?
That's a great question. I think the advent of AI has
Mm,
proved a very insightful, interesting kind of conversation starter with most businesses. I think my observations about AI is that there's a lot of competing narratives there. So, obviously there's the kind of view of the world where AI has come to replace our jobs, and do things on behalf of humans. I don't subscribe to that narrative. I think AI is fundamentally an augmentation tool,
mm,
and the role of the agent has changed significantly over the last even 5 years. Agents are being tasked to deal with more emotive inquiries, pretty
yeah.
much on a regular basis, because a lot of the more monotonous stuff, or maybe not monotonous but lower value,
Mm,
can be dealt by kind of self-service tools, potentially via other mediums like web chat, for example, meaning that agents are having to kind of think in a more problem-solving manner to deal with some of those inquiries, and AI can really support there in terms of assisting them doing their job, and doing the best by the customer.
and so when you think of the deployment of AI, and maybe there's people listening now
Mm,
who, let's be honest, it's you can't read a publication. I've talked about it on lives. It is here, and it reminds me a little bit of when speech analytics was first
yeah,
out there in the market, and you had it was a lot of people talking about it because I think we're all looking. A lot of us like technology, but all of us like doing a good job
yeah.
and doing a good job for our customers. And this seems to be a way that you can improve. How, but how much do you find that people are kind of, we must have it, and they engage with you, but they don't have that clear. You mentioned earlier this kind of, well, what's your nirvana? What's
Yeah,
the overall goal? And then let's get aligned on that first, and then think if you even need it, or do you just have
yeah,
people going a bit of senior leader FOMO, right? Is kind of
yeah,
like
yeah.
everyone's got AI, we need to get it.
I think you're absolutely right. And to be honest, that touches on a really key point. Some of those, you're right, in some of those discussions, it's almost like a resetting the expectations, because we'll be
Mm,
approached by certain businesses who will say to us, we want to implement chatbot, and then actually start to evaluate their current setup. And there are lots of improvements that can be made in terms of getting the basics right. Um,
mm.
and I don't say that in a trivial sense. It's not easy to kind of get the basics right, especially when you've made investments in certain technologies that perhaps make it difficult to achieve those things. But there's so much value that can be generated in delivering a consistent, connected journey for customers. So omni-channel is part of that. And then you can start to look at kind of the automation side of things, chatbots, for example. Once you've got a really strong foundation as an organization to build on, that's when AI is going to be delivering the most value for you. If you try and deliver chatbot on its own without first
Mm.
kind of evaluating the core customer journey, it can serve somewhat problematic, and from a customer's point of view, seem quite disconnected in the way you engage with that business.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. So then when you're doing that, do you advise people we can do this, we can absolutely get it in,
Mm.
and we will support you, but you're going to need to bring some of your own people on the journey?
Yeah, we do. And, I think cloud contact center, there's always a risk of new technology that once it's implemented, it kind of stays static. I think, when I think in the past about business cases that have been created in terms of what value can be driven from SaaS and cloud, there needs to be that overarching wrapper and drive to actually start implementing new features as they become available, because otherwise then you're really just delivering like for like. So that's one of the unique things about how Odigo manages our customers and prospects that we're supporting on that journey to cloud. It's a kind of over the duration of a contract thing where we support
Right.
them with new and emerging challenges, or we're actually proactive in the way we start suggesting changes based on how they're utilizing the services. We never want the solution to just be static. We're always looking for opportunities to improve and enhance the way they're consuming our services. And
And
that
I
is
think
important.
that's great, because I can remember being in like kind of heading up contact centers, and the only time we saw people that were our technology partners were when they were coming around to tell us we were out of scope from something and we needed an upgrade. I was like, I only ever see you with bad news. So I love this idea of saying, kind of running alongside your clients and saying, here's how you can get the best use. Here's what, like, that kind of positive disturbance, right? Around here's sharing best practice. Here's what another client's doing that I thought might relate to what you're doing.
Totally.
How do you want to use it? That for me is the absolute differentiator between, having a good relationship and having a great one.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's vitally important. And then, to your point about having the right organizational model to support that, if you've consumed on-premise technology for a long period of time, there's probably a reality in that it's supported by IT. Well, the new world of cloud means there can be certain shifts in how you manage the solution going forward. More control can be afforded to the business, and it should really be if you're going to maximize the value. So it's kind of change in all angles, and being the best partner by our customers in helping them deliver that change in a logical manner.
Yeah, I love that. And if we think about AI, right, then, if that's the umbrella term, what are the things that sit underneath it?
That's a great question. So I think AI is a broad term. Under that, you've got various different solutions and three-letter acronyms, for want of a better word. So things like natural language processing, chatbot technology, robotic process automation. Obviously, ChatGPT is a solution that we've seen kind of blow the news up recently in our space, certainly in terms of the transformative power that can unlock. Those are the solutions that sit under AI, and each of those technologies have a different role to play in the customer journey.
What are they?
Well, now you're really testing me, but
I know, sorry. I'm learning though. This is what I love.
No, and likewise, I like talking, so it's a good combination. So, natural language processing is the ability to transcribe in real time what a customer is saying to an IVR, for example. So, obviously, traditionally, when you think about customer journeys that actually are the norm still, you phone into an organization and you're greeted by a set of DTMF IVR options. DTMF meaning when you press a button on your keypad on your phone, that's an effective DTMF option. So you're typically guided through a series of different menus, and that's limited by how logical that can be. So clearly you're not going to present a set of customer journeys that are really difficult to go through. So typically you're going to have 4 options, and they'll each kind of pull out into different IVR menus that you can select and continue that journey. With NLP, that model's flipped on its head. So instead of selecting a certain option, you can articulate the reason for your call. NLP then can analyze things like the sentiment, the underlying sentiment, whether positive or negative language is being used, and specific keywords to make dynamic routing decisions. That can drive real tangible value, because suddenly, instead of having a fundamentally programmatic customer journey where you're limited by the number of IVR options you have, and typically those IVR options are linked to the most common reason customers are phoning. So for a delivery company, it might be an update on a delivery. It's limitless. You can articulate the reason for your call and then route that inquiry to the best equipped agent. And actually, along with that call being delivered to the agent, perhaps you can also deliver what the customer has said, enabling the agent to be very proactive on the front foot. So that's NLP. Well, apologies. Shut down that call. Obviously, someone's ears were burning. So that's NLP. Things like robotic process automation, that's going to be about driving value in the back end, so automating back end tasks that don't specifically need to be done by humans. So
Mm.
entering data on a CRM platform, for example, or some specific different back-end activity that an agent needs to do. How can you use AI to help automate some of the more mundane tasks on a daily basis?
People overlook that. They
Yeah,
massively overlook that.
they do.
Because you can make some huge efficiencies doing that, can't you?
You can, and I think as well, not to go off on a tangent, but it's crucial for any organization looking to change technology, and I'm sure it's already done before, but it's worth kind of relaboring the point. There's nothing more valuable than sitting with an agent, sitting with a supervisor, sitting with a business and understanding how they use the technology and the
Yeah.
daily tasks that they need to do, because it's eye-opening in most experiences. And
Mm.
there can be specific things that you can pick up on that are quite easy to automate or quite easy to change. It would deliver, to your point, Martin, significant business value.
Mm. Yeah, sorry,
Um,
I interjected then when you were just about what were you doing next?
so the last one was chatbots. And
Yes.
obviously there's two flavors of chatbots. There's chatbots where it's quite a um, almost like a guided journey. So when you think about, for example, healthcare, it follows lots of different pathways. Okay, it's going to be driven by certain inputs that you put in, and that's going to narrow different causes. So, for example, insurance companies or any process-oriented business would benefit a lot from that kind of chatbot journey. The
Mm.
second chatbot journey is kind of on the fly, where the customer could say anything, right? By virtue of the market that business operates in, there could be a million and one different reasons why I'm
Mm.
actually going to send a message into the chat bot, and it's got to kind of deal with that on the fly. It's got to be trained on the fly to deal with that, and then ultimately hand that over to an agent when for certain examples where that inquiry can't be dealt alone by the chatbot. So those are the
Mm.
two different kind of variants of chatbots. And of course, there's a ream of other AI technologies that I'm not necessarily equipped to talk about, but those are the main ones that we come across in the contact center space.
And just your knowledge of those and being kind of forearmed with that means that when you're engaging with both clients and potential clients, you're probably already thinking, here's where I can
Mm.
here's where I might recommend some solutions and or the mix of solutions, right, to deal with the various business challenges that people have.
Yeah, totally. And there are some real consistence there. So, for example, natural language processing, that will benefit any organization, not just specific businesses. But then,
Mm.
say, if you're an insurance company, chatbot's going to deliver a lot more value for you than an organization that has to deal with that multitude of different customer reasons, because
Mm.
it's going to take a lot of investment to train a chatbot to deal with that.
Mm.
Whereas, for example, with the more programmatic journeys, it's all process driven. So that's where chatbots are highly effective. And
Mm.
it's guiding, it's helping and supporting the business recognize the different transformative benefits those technologies can deliver and jointly select the right solution.
And how do you help people? Because your summary there is brilliant.
Mm,
Um, that kind of just a nice, not oversimplified, but simple way of just saying, here's what you can get, and here's some of the common business challenges. Because I always kind of think of myself still in that potential customer space, right?
mm,
Um, and the options and the information, like you say, Chat GPT just blown up everyone's world. There's a dizzying number of ways that people are telling you can use
mm-hmm,
things.
mm-hmm.
I like how you said though, you've got to start with some basics.
Yeah.
Spend time with the ops team. What are your goals? What's the customer journey? What is the industry you're in? These type of things, because that's where everything starts, right?
Yeah, totally. And for some of those technologies like natural language processing, you wouldn't just, it's not bang or bust. You don't just implement it and leave it. It's an iterative project. So NLP is the best example of what you've just described there. We'd always recommend that if you're going to implement NLP, you first actually just collect the reason for the customer's call. So you change
Yeah.
nothing about that customer journey. You still have the DTMF options. You activate natural language processing, simply asking why you're phoning. And perhaps you caveat that with you're doing some research on customer demand to improve our service. Then within 2 weeks, you've got a load of metadata and data about your customers' calling habits and contact habits that will then later drive what you implement from a self-service automation point of view. Because one of the other things that we observe quite often is organizations believing they have a very concrete understanding as to why customers are contacting them. But the problem is that's being driven by post-call activities, so things like wrap-up codes, etc., or to your point earlier, speech analytics. There's always going to be limitations there, and often when we go through this journey with businesses, they'll be surprised to recognize that perhaps one of the top reasons why customers contact them wasn't on their radar. And then you can start to really tailor those self-service options that you put forward to your customers, not at the expense of customer experience, right?
No, never.
No, exactly. And but that's important. And I think whenever self-service, you've got to caveat it with that, because we're not wanting to deliver self-service to make a journey more complicated or difficult for a customer. It's got to be something that delivers tangible benefit, and it's got to be a service that customers have the option to use should they wish. You will always need agents to deal with emotive inquiries, and customers will always want to speak to agents, because if anything, when I joined the market 6.5 years ago, everyone was saying voice is on the decline. Well, actually, we've seen the complete opposite of that over the last 5 years. Voice is on the increase. Digital channels are great, and if my contact reason is appropriate, I will use digital. But if it's personal, I'm still going to use voice.
Yeah, I think even in the industry, we can often talk about things and then finish work, let's say, and go do something in our personal life and go, I just want to speak to someone.
Exactly, yeah. We like speaking to people. It's human nature.
Yes, it is. And I think all of these things, you mentioned something right at the start, all of these things can help our teams. You know, they're not, you mentioned the great word earlier, augment. It's not to replace, is to augment, improve. Maybe roles will change. And when you look ahead, sort of even short term, other than the work you're involved in right now, do you know of some things, or there are some things either coming down the track or that you think are coming that you're really jazzed about?
So I think the advancement of NLP is going to be big, because obviously that's the starting point. We're yet to see sentiment analysis being used in a really effective way. So actually being able to recognize the tone of language that's being used and then making the correct routing decision off the back of that. I think that could be vitally impactful to those contact centers that deal with perhaps vulnerable customers. That's where I think we're going to see big step changes in technology that's being delivered. I think a lot of it is still, though, getting the basics right and doing a good job of the basics, and then looking for opportunities to deliver more transformative services over the top. And I still think when you look at the market as a whole, there's still a lot of businesses that are yet to make the jump to cloud, and we're gonna see that happen over the next couple of years, I would suggest. And then you'll really start to see the ramp up in more transformative technology being rolled out.
Why haven't they made the jump yet, then, do you think? Is that legacy of legacy?
Yeah, I think so. I think attitudes to cloud as well. I mean, obviously it will be organization dependent. Those businesses, you know, when you think about those organizations that have disrupted certain markets, you know, not naming specific organizations, but you know, how you might buy a car, for example, how you might bank. There's always going to be challenger brands that are willing to take more risks, and that percolates down into buying, you know, investment choices around certain technologies. I still think for some of the bigger legacy businesses, there's investment there that they need to maximize, and it's, you know, it would be improper of a salesperson to suggest, look, we know you've made that investment, but just make the jump. It's not good business.
Don't worry about it.
Exactly. They will change. I think the attitude to cloud as a whole has matured massively. It's not going to be appropriate for all organizations. I think there's this assumption cloud is the answer to everything. For some businesses, it might not be appropriate.
Yeah.
But for many businesses, I think we'll see them finally start to make the jump from those legacy platforms that we all know.
Yeah. No, really, really interesting. And also, when it comes to language, you also have a personal interest in language as well, don't you?
Yeah, I do. You're right. So we didn't actually, and I think this is a good thing, Martha. We didn't speak about COVID. We didn't utter that word,
No, no, true.
which is good, and we shouldn't, right? Especially in our space. So when COVID hit, I think lots of people looked for lots of different things to do to kind of, whilst you're in that lockdown mode, be productive. And one of the things that I decided to embark on was learning a language, which language is, well, I thought languages were not my forte. I still wouldn't say it is my forte, by the way, but it's something that I picked up because my fiance is Norwegian. And I thought, okay, what better way to spend my time than actually trying to learn a language and investing in developing myself? And I've stuck with it for coming up to 2.5 years now, and I've
Mm,
surprised myself. And I think
mm.
actually you've got, when you and I had that initial conversation, I found that you kind of had a similar journey, and for us both, it's amazing that if you stick with something, you will improve, even though you don't think you will improve when you start.
Yeah, well, definitely. I'm a big believer in just kind of that consistency of just
Mm.
showing up and don't worry about failing. You've just got to keep going and keep going. So how would you say you're, I mean, Norwegian as well? It's not something you hear every day. People say, where would you class yourself in terms of competency?
Yeah, so if anyone's familiar with the grading that's used for languages, I think it's from C1 to A2. A2 being complete beginner, novice, and then C2 being not native, but on that level.
Mm, yeah.
I'm certainly not C2. I'm certainly not A2. Realistically, I'm C1 to B1, which is high intermediate to kind of coming into fluency now with the language. I've not mastered it.
Great.
There's lots of subjects. I certainly couldn't have the conversation that I've had today, Martin, with in Norwegian. It would have been a far shorter and forced conversation, but I'm getting there, and I'm going to keep at it until I'm mastery. Well, I'm going
I
to
love
try
it.
and be a master.
I love it. Do you think at any point you're going to have opportunity to use it in work? So, like a Norwegian client.
Do you know what? I'd love that. And so obviously we're an industry that love exhibition events, and I've had the opportunity to wheel out the Norwegian at various different
Have
exhibition
you?
events. Yeah, just meeting, and often I was. There's that stereotype that as a salesperson you're looking at everyone's badges, to kind of
Mm,
gauge what
yeah,
business they're
yeah.
from. There's some truth in that, but now I'm looking at them to see if, for example, they might be from Norway, and I might be able to wheel out my Norwegian skills, and I have done once or twice, and yeah, I relish the opportunity. So it hasn't come up enough, clearly, because we're a business that's focused on the UK and Ireland, but occasionally you do get that conversation thrown in, and it's really nice.
What's been the biggest learning from just learning a new language?
The biggest learning is don't underestimate yourself. Don't underestimate your potential as a human being. And that's a grand statement, but honestly, my opinion before going into that was there's no way I'm going to be able to learn a language, right? It's just out of
Mm,
my capability and wheelhouse for skills.
mm,
But it's the consistency piece. You stick with something long enough, you will get better. Not everyone's going to get better at the same pace, but if you keep at it, that's going to pay dividends in the future. And I think that approach can be applied to all walks of life, even how we look at technology to an extent.
mm,
Stick with
mm.
something, build on it, and improvement will follow.
Does it when you're at home, are you conversing in both or
I try to. So this is, and we do for the most part. We'll try and speak in Norwegian to aid my learning experience. If it's an emotive conversation, I don't mean necessarily like we're having
yeah, yeah.
a disagreement about something, but if it's something that's important, for example, my fiance wants to discuss work, preferences are you'd speak in English, just
Mm,
so the kind of emotional subtext isn't missed. But in the
mm.
main, yeah, we try and speak in Norwegian.
That's brilliant. I love it. And do people? I won't do it, but do people at work ask you to say certain things in Norwegian?
They do. It has happened to me before, especially my mates. But then it's kind of like the next question is, well, how do I know what you're saying isn't
Yeah,
just
you could say anything.
exactly? So you're never going to win in that scenario, I've decided.
No, but we spoke before, didn't we, about how I could learning learning Turkish, and I wouldn't say I'm anywhere near as proficient as you are in Norwegian, but it felt like at times it was painful, but it felt like it was unlocking
Yeah,
different parts of my brain.
exactly. I agree. I mean, it's good for you actually to, and I think they've done studies on it, but it's good for your brain health to learn a language, and it's something as being a UK citizen, having lived in England my whole life, we don't ever really have the requirement to learn
Mm.
secondary languages, but it's
Yeah.
something that most European countries will have had to have done to
Mm,
communicate and collaborate with respective
mm,
countries and markets. So
mm.
definitely will always attest to the benefits of learning a language. Completely agree with you, Martin. It's almost like that moment where you just unlock half your brain that has never been used.
Yeah. And I think, like you say, it's kind of no matter what challenge you get now, whether it's something at work or
Mm.
you think, you know what, if I just chip away at this, look what I've done learning. Is it a difficult language to learn, Norwegian?
So no, because it's a Germanic language. So there's lots of similarities in the words that are used between Norwegian and English. So it's not too difficult. It's nothing like having to learn, for example, a Critic language uh, being someone that speaks in a fundamentally Germanic language. So it's
Mm,
not the most difficult, but like any language, it's going to take time, and you'll know more than anyone. It's the syntax that takes the longest to understand, and also some of the cultural subtext, the
mm,
prepositions, the
mm,
different not catchphrases, but different things it will say that mean something to us, but to someone that's trying to master a language, it's like, well, I don't understand that. And
mm, mm.
there's loads of those, and that's the hardest piece.
Do you know what? Even just I would say, like I said, not as in depth as you, but even just trying to learn Turkish, what a realization I had was, my God, people where English is not their first language, for them to have learned English, when you talk about cultural nuances and different ways that all of the intricacies that we
Mm,
have of our language, I have so much more. I had respect before, but I had so much more respect
yeah,
for
you
people
do.
who are multilingual, let's say.
You do. Yeah, you do. You're absolutely right. It's that kind of newfound sense of respect because
Mm,
it takes an awful long time to become capable in any language, and suddenly when you
mm,
realize the amount of work that goes into it, you're right. You're
mm,
suddenly a lot more understanding.
mm. And where we are now in terms of the time we're recording, you mentioned kind of exhibitions and
Mm.
conferences and things like that. Where can people find you next?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, obviously, if you want to have a conversation with us, Odigo, you can find us on our website. You can contact me directly. You can contact any colleagues that you find on LinkedIn or might have mutual connections with. I'm always, open to discussing anything really, anything related to the contact center market or cloud contact center projects. We'll be at the Communications Technology Expo this week, or at the time of recording. So it's obviously the 20th of March
Nice.
today.
Yeah,
21st tomorrow will be at the Excel Centre exhibiting there. So I'm not sure when this will
great.
go out on the wires, Martin, but there's
I
plenty of
think
opportunity to speak to us.
I think the 22nd, so it's 2 days, isn't it? Are you there then as well?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, great. Um, go and also if you do want to talk to Jake in Norwegian or all things contact center technology, but also Man United as well. I'm sad to say.
Yes, I mean, I'm what you would class as your typical Manchester United fan. So I'm born and raised in Reading. So
Yeah.
naturally, I've had to support Man United. But yeah, willing to have those conversations as well. Just not about the Liverpool game, actually. I've got to draw the line there.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to say anything. Being a Tottenham fan, I'm permanently in a state of
Yeah,
sorrow. So,
I know.
Jake Gardner, thanks so much for coming on. It's fascinating, and I would add to that. I'd recommend people on LinkedIn getting in touch with you, both this conversation, this podcast, but also the one we had
Mm.
before. I've really enjoyed. So, thank you very much for coming on.
No, thank you, Martin. It's been a pleasure, and thanks for having me. Honestly, I think you do great work, so it's really nice to have been here today.
Thank you so much.